So if you want the best decks to climb to Legend, you have come to the right place. Basically, I'm going to give you 5 to 7 of the best decks, and then a couple of honorable mentions at the end that I personally think are good, but might not have the stats or the sample size to back it up yet. So the first one is, you guessed it, Token Druid. It's broken. Like, it has the highest win rate in the game across every level of play. It's got 4% higher win rate than the second best deck in Diamond through Legend. In top 1000 Legend, it's a 1.5% higher win rate than the next highest deck. And there are a lot of reasons why, and disclaimer, before you craft this deck, just know that this is probably the most likely deck to be nerfed when nerfs eventually come out, because usually they come out with nerfs about 2 weeks after a mini set or an expansion to just balance things out. I predict if they do nerf anything, this will be the main one, so craft it with a little bit of risk. But if you want to just climb to Legend this season in particular, this is a great deck to do it with. They just came out with a new card, the Druid of the Reef, which is basically a 1-mana version of this 2-mana card, which is actually not even that bad, and something that you oftentimes pick with the athletic studies. They basically just gave Druid a better version of that. Not to mention the fact that you still have all of the same powerful stuff with Razormane Battle Guard, Oracle of Elune, comboing that with Greybow, or just comboing that with a ton of minions on the board turn 4 and then playing Arbor up turn 5 to close out the game. There are a lot of different things you can do with this deck to win, not to mention just strong early game tempo, and a new 1-drop minion that is extremely powerful. You also run the new card, the Jerry Rig Carpenter, and the Soil, just to have a little bit more damage and a couple more minions that you can produce throughout the game. The next one I'd say is actually Quest Warlock. There are a couple of different ways that you could build this. You could build this with the Flesh Giant, or you could build this without the Flesh Giant and the Gold Shadow Knoll, and run it more of a finish the quest really, really fast style of build, which is the one that I'm personally using because I think that it is better. You finish the quest faster, you still have decent removal. I threw in an extra Hellfire to make sure I could deal with those Token Druids a little bit more consistently. You finish your quest quickly around turn 7 or 8, and then you can quickly end the game after playing like a hand of Gul'dan or a Backfire on an empty deck to finish off your opponent. And you've got, like Warlock, a ton of healing and removal and all that to stay alive into some of the more difficult matchups like Token Druid and Warrior. Those matchups are very board focused and can be difficult if you don't get the removal, but if you do draw the removal, those matchups are very winnable. This deck is a little bit harder to play than a lot of the decks on this list because you have to use health as a resource and manage hand size and how much damage you can take and all that. So it's a little bit more difficult, but it's definitely worth it if you want to try it out. And I don't think it'll be nerfed, but it might be. So again, disclaimer on that one. So the next deck on the list is the new Quest Warrior. The new Quest Warrior basically runs Barov with either Rancor or Man the Cannons, depending on which one you want to use. Maybe Rancor is too expensive because it's an epic, or maybe, like me, you actually value the 3 damage to a single minion a lot because it's how you can deal with Aggro Druid a lot. You're able to kill the Razormane Battle Guard with this 3 damage on 2, and kill off maybe one of their 1-mana 2/1 minions. And then obviously Mr. Smite is the other new card, along with the Blacksmithing Hammer, which is pretty good. Like, you can just trade it away if you draw it too early before finishing your quest, and after you finish your quest, you can play it to draw cards off of Cutting Class, or just trade it away to draw more cards and try to find more pirates. It's a really solid deck. It's got like a 53% win rate, and this is the last deck that I think will actually potentially receive nerfs. Other than this, all of the decks after this will probably not. So the next deck on this list is Face Hunter, and Face Hunter is very similar to the old version of Face Hunter, but there is 2 main key differences. We basically took out the Cult Neophyte because that was good against Quest Mage, and there aren't really any Quest Mages anymore, and the Faceless Felmaw, Imprisoned Felmaw, because again, good against Quest Mage. If they don't run minions, this will go face, but now with a ton of Quest Warriors and more Token Druids and more board-based matchups, the Felmaw's not going face as consistently. So take him out and enter in Arcane Anomaly to snowball with the Doggy Biscuit. Now you play Arcane Anomaly. Every time you play a spell, it pumps its health. You play some cheap spells along with the Doggy Biscuit, then give it Ramming Mount. And next thing you know, the opponent has to deal with a giant minion that's immune every time it attacks, and there's nothing your opponent can do. And then, if they do kill it, you just go back to the normal package of Trampling Rhino with Piercing Shot and Aim Shot, Quick Shot, and Hero Powers to finish your opponent off that way. You got a couple of different win conditions with this deck. It's very strong. I would recommend playing it, and it's relatively cheap. You only really need 2 legendaries. The last deck on this list is Libram Paladin. I haven't seen it as much, but I still think that it's very, very strong. You could run this in a couple of different ways. You could run it with the secrets, which is perfectly fine. You could potentially run it without the secrets, which is the one I like, which is, in my opinion, a little bit better, but it's up to you. Or you can run Hand Buff Paladin, but I don't think Hand Buff Paladin is as good as this. Even though you have the Parrot, even though you can give it Blessing of Authority, twice, basically. You put Blessing of Authority on one thing, and then you put Blessing of Authority on the Parrot again. I don't think it's good enough, but the Parrot is good if you play Libram of Hope on a minion. You play Libram of Hope on a minion, the Squawker summons another one, next thing you know, you got 2 Divine Shield 8/8 minions with Taunt over the course of 2 turns. Doesn't work if you target your face, it has to target a minion, so keep that in mind. I did make that misplay the very first time I did the combo, but for the most part, this deck has a lot of things going for it. It has good healing if you need it against aggro, it has decent removal with Blade Master Sumeru and Pumps, along with Libram of Justice, and Barov with City Tax, and Broomsticks in order to rush things in. It's got everything you could possibly need. I think it's probably the best well-rounded deck in the game, along with Lady Liadrin to get you insane late game value, with basically infinite Librams of Wisdom. So yeah, this deck is probably the best well-rounded deck, and I would highly recommend trying it out. So the next deck on this list is Control N'Zoth Priest. Now this deck, you don't necessarily have to run this exact build. This is the one that I used and went like 5-0 with. Again, a small sample size, but one that I think has promise, and that's why I'm putting it at the end. Plague Proto-Drake is a double-edged sword. You can run it, and I run it, because I want to combo with N'Zoth, but it can be bad sometimes, because if you resummon stuff off of the Amulet of Undying and get a Proto-Drake instead of a Taunt minion, it can sometimes lose you the game. But in really, really long matchups, being able to get multiple Plague Proto-Drakes and get 2 giant minions off of this one minion and then resummon it and get more giant minions has proven to be very, very, very powerful. So I would recommend this build, but if you want to experiment, go right on ahead. I also run an Against All Odds, Hysteria, Zyrella, Against All Odds with Wave of Apathy is good, not to mention a ton of resource generation with Pandaren Importer, Palm Reading, and Venomous Scorpion. You got everything you could possibly need with this deck with insane late game. It's a little bit greedy, so it might lose to aggro sometimes, but for the most part, I would recommend this deck. Okay, so the next there are 2 other decks, and I think that N'Zoth Shaman is a little bit worse than Quest Shaman, but I think that they both have a lot of potential, because their worst matchups going into this, or at least Quest Shamans, was Quest Mage, because they're able to kill you really fast, especially after your quest got nerfed and it became slower to complete. However, now that Quest Mage is seeing less play and boards are more, like games are more board focused, having cards like Perpetual Flame, having cards like Lightning Bolt and Serpentine Portal, and randomly generating cards like Lightning Storm, all of a sudden are a lot more powerful. So I would recommend trying out Quest Shaman, maybe N'Zoth Shaman. I think it's more fun, but I think it's a little bit worse. And yeah, that's about it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you do, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. And one other deck on here that I didn't mention because I'm not entirely sure about it yet is Big Warrior. Big Warrior is good. I actually think that has a lot of potential because it has really good removal and it's really good against aggro decks like Druid, like Hunter, like Garrote Rogue. If you gain enough armor, you just don't die. But it's not consistent enough. Because if you don't draw Commencement or the Cowardly Grunt on curve, you're basically a sitting duck, and it makes me feel a little bit bad to play it. So it's up to you if you want to try this one. I think it's a little bit riskier, but it does have above a 50% win rate, at about a 50.75 in Gold or Diamond to Legend, so you can try it if you want. And then now, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.